All right, I'm ready to go whenever you are. Oh, you put your hat on. You're ready to go.
Yeah, I gotta get the game face on, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, boys and girls. I want to welcome you to another episode of Trainers Talks. I'm joined by a very special guest. This guest is somebody who's been a mentor to me very early in my career, and probably about 80% of the things that I still use today came from the class and some of the instruction he gave me back at JMU, back when I went there 2001 to 2005. So Coach Werner, gonna give a little intro here. Coach Werner is currently the Senior Director for Women's Basketball at Virginia Tech in strength and conditioning. Before that, he was at Auburn, and then before that, where I got to know him, was at JMU for 20 years, where he also got his master's in kinesiology, and also he got his bachelor's at Austin Peay State University. You know, he's worked with NFL, Major League Baseball, MLS, pro basketball, Olympic athletes, the gambit, and you know, he's published over 30 articles in various journals and magazines and websites, and the list goes on and on. We almost would we would take up the whole hour if we went through all the accomplishments. So I want to give a warm welcome to Coach Werner. How you doing, Coach?
Good. Thank you, Don. It's been fun following your journey. I'm so happy for Facebook and, the various social media devices where I can follow you and see how your life has been progressing. It's been very impressive and fun to watch.
Thank you, man. It's been the same to kind of watch you and to see your. I remember, I think it's like 4 or 5 years ago, seeing Hans and your son, doing the powerlifting. He was doing powerlifting? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And
he broke the world record in 100% raw. It's called 100% raw powerlifting. They wear no gear. No elbow sleeves, no bench press shirts. It's legitimate lifting. So he broke the world record for the teenage 18 to 19-year-olds for the 220-pound class.
Jeez.
And he's still getting after it today. He's 25 now, but he still loves to train hard, and he's doing personal training now. He's seeing guys like you, and he's wanting to get more involved with that. Yeah. I thought he was going to follow my footsteps and be a strength and conditioning coach, and maybe he still might. But he got a degree at Virginia Tech and finished with honors and Phi Beta Kappa and everything, dual degree, dual major. But it was heading him down a path towards FBI and Secret Service work, and he just came home one day. He says, "Dad, I just don't want to get in that. I don't want to have to carry a gun. I don't want to have to do that kind of stuff." So he's been interning with me for a couple of years now and helping me with the team and doing a great job. So I'm happy to see him continue on and maybe go into personal training and maybe strength and conditioning.
Oh, that's cool.
Might have to send him out there to spend some time with you to learn some things.
Hey, I think if he comes out here, he might not want to go back. It's pretty nice, the weather, and I think this year is probably 2020 is probably not the best year, but any other year is a great time to be out here. When I was looking through the website at Virginia Tech, the strength and conditioning website, I was noticing that you still have a similar program where you have interns. You have like a place for interns to sign up, and when did mentoring and doing that program? How did that evolve? Where did that come from?
At JMU, started there in '92, but I'll even go further back than that. I mean, I started in the profession kind of like you're doing. I was training, doing personal training before people called it that. I was just, in the gym training, and people liked what I was doing. So I was teaching them the stuff I was doing back when I was bodybuilding and powerlifting. And I was just voracious in my study of the body and nutrition and things of that nature to be a good physique athlete, be a good power lifter. You have to understand the whole body. You can't just know about sets and reps. You got to know about the nutrition and the recovery and all that. And this was back in the 80s, back in like 83, 84, 85. And I had competed as a teenager and done well. And then I had competed as a novice and done well. And then I had to go up to the open class in bodybuilding. And I was shocked because I'm like 19, 20 years old. And I'm looking at these guys I'm having to compete against now that are like 40 and they've been doing it for 20 years. And yeah, I remember one bodybuilding contest, this big guy, and he was great. He ended up winning the show. He was probably in his mid 40s. And he came up to me and he says, "Hey man," he says, "Do you mind putting the oil on my back, helping me out?" And I'm putting the oil on his back, and I'm like, oh man, I got to compete with that. And his back was just, massive. And I thought, this is going to take me years to get a back like that, And so I evaluated, my genetics and my path. And I thought, you know what, I really like helping other people more than I really have the ambition to go as far as this is, and I enjoyed bodybuilding and that early on, but I started training other people. And long story short, I trained Miss Tennessee, Miss Georgia, Miss Florida. I love training women. I trained 2 Mr. Tennessees, guys that ended up winning the Mr. Tennessee twice. And that was a whole lot of fun. But as I went through those steps and then I got into college and I thought I really want to get more involved into the science and learn more about it. And so I went to Austin Peay and got in their human performance program. And first day I walked in the weight room, their strength and conditioning coach was relatively new. It was back before a lot of schools, especially that size, even had strength and conditioning coaches. And his name's Dan Austin, and he was a world champion power lifter. And I told Dan, I said, I need a job, I'm barely making it, and he says, well, I've got a job. And so anyway, long story short, Dan put me through a couple tests and hired me and had me vacuuming that weight room every day and those athletes. And, I had the cheerleading team as my team, and then I helped with football and basketball and helped with all the other sports. And I had a couple other sports. And so anyway, we wanted to go back east.
Yeah.
And so Stephen Pliss called me up. He says, "Hey, I'm at James Madison University. Just got hired here as the head strength coach. This place is awesome. You ought to see it." Didn't know anything about JMU. It was a small school back then, and just getting up and coming. And he says, "I want you to be my assistant." He says, full-time job coming, you can continue and finish your master's degree, because I'd already started my master's degree out there at University of Pacific. And so anyway, came to JMU, and tell me if I'm talking too much, Donavan.
No, keep going.
Came to JMU and 92, actually. Came to JMU in 92, August of 92. I was Steve's assistant. We had 28 sports at the time, 28 teams we worked with out of that one weight room that you used to come into class. And we had basically a closet up at the condo for basketball. It's where the equipment room was meant to be, and the equipment room is now. So it was a room with low ceilings. The tall guys couldn't do any overhead lifting. But anyway, Steve and I covered all 28 teams, football included, basketball, all those teams that, you have to travel with sometimes. I continued on and finished my master's degree and got involved with the kinesiology program there. I was teaching some racquetball classes and some tennis classes also. And when I look back on it and I talk to these young kids now, these young kids coming into strength and conditioning, and they talk about, well, I don't know if I could work with 3 teams. I'm like, dude, I worked with 28 and I was in school every night as a full-time graduate student and working on writing a thesis, and I was teaching class. And I said, and I was married. And I said, and there was no lunch break. There was no lifting break. You just came and you humped it till you just drug your butt back into bed at night. It was involved, but it was fun, man. It was a great time. We loved it. So these young strength coaches now, they get spoiled young. I mean, they come in and they got 1-2 teams, and they think they're working hard. But anyway.
So actually, I want to kind of play off that a little bit. Is so what would you say, like, over your career? You're kind of saying it right now, but what are some of the evolutions you've seen over the strength and conditioning field over the last 30 years?
Just more specialization, larger staffs.
Yeah.
I'll kind of take you through the transition that happened at JMU and how it grew. And also finishing off that last question about the interns. So, when I came in there, we had that much to do.
Yeah.
2 guys. We had 2. He and I. That was it. And I thought, we've got a kines program here. But they knew nothing about strength and conditioning. I mean, they were totally aerobic. I mean, and my lead professor, Dr. Dalton, you probably never met her. I think she had retired before you guys came through, but great lady. She taught a strength and conditioning class, and she taught it from one of the most interesting angles I'd ever been involved with. It was almost frustrating, but it was encouraged. It made you think. She wanted us to rebuild the human body all the time, think from a different, totally different angle. But anyway, as I'm finishing my master's degree, and I did a thesis. Back then, if you did a thesis, you still had to do the total testing and everything, So anyway, after that, they said, hey, you know more about this stuff than we do. Why don't you teach a class? Because I got promoted to the head strength and conditioning position at that point, because Steve left. Steve left to go to the Olympic Training Center to be the head strength coach out there in Colorado Springs. And they promoted me up to the head guy. And so I hired my assistant. But anyway, I said, okay, I'll teach it. I'll teach it one semester. I'll teach it in the spring. I said, I can't do it in the fall because of football, but I'll teach it in the spring, 1 night a week. Do it on Monday nights after all the athletes are done. We can use this facility. Well, Donavan, that thing turned into like 100 people signing up for it. And I'm like, hey, I didn't sign up for this. I can't handle this because I wanted it to be involved. I wanted it to be hands-on. I didn't want to try to teach out of a book how to do physical.
Yeah.
It's a physical, discipline. You have to do it. You have to physically get in there and get sweaty and get involved with it to learn it. So they said, okay, well, we'll drop the numbers down. I said, there's no way. I said, let's drop it down. So we dropped it down to like 50. And I said, that's still too many. Because back then they wouldn't let me hire my assistant. It was just me teaching that class after a long day work. So then we said, okay, let's transition. I'll teach it both semesters. How's that? We'll break it up. So they said, okay, which I needed that extra money anyway. And then eventually, that became the breeding ground for that intern program.
Yeah, gotcha.
Kids took the class and they showed they were really interested in it. We would steer them towards our intern program to say, with guys like yourself that were like, hey, they liked the class, they were interested in the class, interested and wanted to learn more. I said, come on in. The only way to learn more is to get in there and get involved and get your hands dirty, and see.
Take it for, I'll kind of speak for myself in that class. So I remember that class once a week, and I wish I knew the guy's name, who also did the assistant program with me. But I remember how you would break down each group. We would almost be in the classroom, and then we would work our way in the classroom into the gym, right. and we would go through the cues and the protocol for, if you're doing a Romanian deadlift, or if you're doing a squat, or if you're doing a deadlift, if you're doing whatever however sequences was. Yeah. And I've used that kind of a blueprint of what you did in that class to whenever we hire trainers and stuff, and they're new and they're kind of fresh, I make sure, even though they might have a certification, I almost take them through the same process where they go 5 to 8 weeks with me, like a couple of times a week for 45 minutes to an hour. I would go through the anatomy, what we're working, what it's doing, and then break down the cues and the progressions of like when you would use it.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's good. I'm glad you're using that. Yeah, I mean, you have to. You have to. You can't just have somebody, and especially in your profession. I've consulted with groups kind of like you have, where they've asked me to come in and consult, and maybe help them with their hiring processes.
Yeah.
And I said, you can't just trust that certificate, that certification, because there's a lot of bad certifications out there. Number one, you got to identify the key ones you're going to allow, and they're legitimate. But then some people can get through tests, with a 70% and get the same certificate as the person that made 95%. There's a difference. It's like doctors, or any profession, there's the ones that got through with C's, and there's the ones that really know what they're doing and got through with A's, or really studied and it's not even that as much as it is the ones that can teach it, the ones that can take it and assimilate it through what they learn and then take it and apply it. You've got to be able to apply it, because I see that's one thing, you were asking about things that I've seen through the years. I've seen a lot of kids like at JMU there later on, as I was applying or had jobs open and people were applying to them, I'd get hundreds and hundreds of resumes, like within days. Like I'd advertise a job for an assistant position, and then 3 days later, I'd have 125 resumes sitting on my desk.
Wow.
And, at the end of the process, I'd have 200. And out of those 200 resumes, 150 of them may all have the master's degrees.
Wow.
And I might have a handful that have doctorates. I had people that were chiropractors that were trying to change professions, different things like that. So how do you break that down to who's really the best, who you're going to hire? It's a tough thing to do. So, you have to look at everybody's, you have to evaluate everybody, but then you have to speak to them and ask them those questions to say, how would you teach me this? And how does this, how do you get to this result here, starting down here? What's the process? You can't just jump up there. There's a process. There's a stair step that you have to follow to get there. And if you try to rush it, you're going to hurt somebody. If you rush it, something's going to break down on the process. So, that would slowly start evaluating people and eliminating people. And then you may be able to ask them, okay, produce a video later on, as people start having cameras in their pockets. Make a video, show me how you would do it, and teach me the progression. Teach me everything important about doing a bench press. What are all the things that I need to watch out for? If I've never done it before in my life, what are the things you need to teach me to help me become proficient at that, so I can get the most out of it? And then you'd start evaluating off of that. If they can't teach you on the video, then they're going to have a hard time in person.
Totally.
Because you can edit a video. You can't edit in person.
So kind of looking now, what is, like, when it comes to, I know programming is such a giant entity. There's so much science, there's a lot of art to how you program, how the team's progression over several years are over a year. What's got you excited now, or a style of programming that you're kind of into right now in terms of setting up teams, progression over a year?
The art part is the fun part. The X's and O's, the science part, you learn that early on, and why you do certain exercises, how they affect, different muscles, different joints. That doesn't change. The human body hasn't changed. It's the same today as it was 1,000 years ago. Still an elbow's an elbow, and knee's a knee, and the bicep attaches, and, the hamstring attached the same way. Nothing's changed there. The things that have changed is communication, styles of communication. Back early on, you could just yell at everybody, and everybody was okay. You can't just yell at everybody nowadays. You got to learn how to communicate, and that's something I learned early on, is that you got to be able to speak a lot of different languages. So I may be speaking football language for 3 hours straight, and then like that cross country team I mentioned, they come rolling in. Well, football loves the weight room. Football loves strength training.
Yeah.
They come in the door, he screaming, wanting to put weights on the bar. That little cross country team, that's the most uncomfortable part of their day, is coming in that weight room.
Yeah.
If you speak to them with football language, they're going right out the door crying. So you got to turn it real quick and learn how to speak cross country.
Yeah.
And you got to learn how to speak with a kind, caring voice to say, without saying it in so many words, I know you're uncomfortable right now. Just walking in that door was very uncomfortable for you. Just like if they took me out to their course and said, now you go run, that would be very uncomfortable for me to run a cross country, race like they do. So I had to learn, you got to learn to speak a lot of languages. There's a lot of psychology involved in this. And the more you learn to change your tone and change your communication to speak those languages, the more success you're going to have as a strength and conditioning coach. Because I've seen a lot of guys come into the field, guys and girls, more guys, thinking, oh, this is who I am. I'm just going to yell at everybody,
Yeah.
And that's okay for maybe one or two teams, but then you lose everybody else. And then where are they going? They're going up to the athletic directors saying, that guy's an a-hole down there. He's just ballistic. He's scaring my kids away.
Yeah.
And back then, when you had to train all those teams, you had to help everybody. You couldn't isolate and say, okay, I'm just a football guy. You had to say, okay, I'm going to help field hockey. We're going to win a national championship in field hockey, and we're going to be good in lacrosse, and we're going to be good in soccer, and I got to speak lacrosse, and I got to speak soccer, and I got to speak this and that, and I got to speak male soccer, and I got to speak female soccer, and I got to learn to speak all these different little nuances on these languages. And the more, and that's when I would tell young strength coaches back then that would come in with all this X's and O's, program design knowledge, and that's all they wanted to do was sit there at the computer and design programs. Said, you got that part down pat, man. It's time to move away from it,
Yeah.
You go to, any good mechanic and, he's learned how to deal with that engine. He doesn't have to go back into the manual every week, He's got to learn to deal with the customers if he wants his business to grow.
Totally.
So you got to start with customer, dealing with people. You got to become a people person. So I'd say you need to start studying great coaches that have done well, John Wooden and, Coach K, these guys that have really done well, and learn why they did well, why they had success, why they had longevity. And then start studying great leaders, great business leaders, great team leaders, because you're a leader. You have a position as a leader.
Totally.
And as soon as you think you're not a leader, they'll run right over you. You got to learn to talk to people and lead them. Because that's where the term coach comes from. Do you know the etymology of coach?
I don't.
Yeah, the word coach is a Hungarian word. Kocsis. It was a town in Hungary where they built the basically stagecoach, coach.
Gotcha.
And a coach is designed to take you from where you are to where you want to go, where you are currently to where you want to be down the road.
Yeah.
And so many years after that, and I think it was in England, they started using it. It started becoming a term they would use in academics as a tutor. And then it started becoming a term back in the 1800s for somebody that taught athletes, because you're trying to take them from where they are to where they want to be, to where they can be, where they need to be successful. And that's what a coach is. That's what a trainer is. Somebody they're coming to you saying, hey, I'm a little bit heavy, and here's the picture. I want to look like this guy in the underwear ad.
Yeah.
My wife just bought me these jockey underwear, and look at this guy. I want to look like this guy, Yeah, but look, I ain't quite there. What can you do? So that's when you become the coach to say, jump on board. We're going to go slow, but we're going to take you on that ride, and we're going to eventually get there.
I love that.
We're going to get to that place.
Couple kind of stories. One of the things was, I remember when I was there at JMU, and I only saw this like once or twice, and you pulled out this binder of like, it looked like Russian. I don't know what it was.
Soviet. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it had all these documents of exercises and different, what was that?
Well, early on in the competitive strength world of weightlifting, the Russians were the best. The
Yeah.
Bulgarians and the Russians were the strongest, the most explosive athletes out there. They were winning a lot of gold medals in a lot of sports. So who was my assistant when you were there? I'm trying to remember.
I think it was Greg. I don't know his last name. Was it Greg or
Um,
Matt? Matt or
Matt. Might have been
Matt?
Matt.
It was Matt.
Was it Matt Green?
Yes.
Big Matt. Yeah.
Yeah, big Matt. Yeah, big guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Big Matt does what you basically started his own business just like you, and had a really successful one. But anyway, well, when I took over as the head strength coach at JMU, the first assistant I hired, his name was Freddie Hatfield. His father was Dr. Squat Fred Hatfield.
Okay.
Well, I'll take you even further back. Steve Plisk, who I worked for at Austin P and then at JMU, he was the head guy at both those places. I was his assistant. Steve is and was a voracious reader of the literature.
Yeah.
I mean, just everything in the world that had been published, anything in the world that had been published on anything to do with strength and conditioning, Steve had it or was getting it. I remember going up to the library. This was before the computers,
Yeah.
stuff on the computer. So everything that he would want, he would have to go through interlibrary loan. And I was the running dog to go get it. Hey, G, go up and get that article. It just came in, from, the guy over in Scandinavia or the guy in Russia. So I remember one day I go up there to pick up the article, and the librarian says, "Who is this guy, Stephen Plisk?" I said, "He's the head strength coach. He's my boss." She said, "He gets more interlibrary loan than anybody on this campus, more than any professor. This guy reads more than anybody." I said, "I know." I said, "It's amazing." I said, "He studies everything." And I said, "After he finishes it, I get it. And sometimes I pull it out of the trash because he'll think, oh, G doesn't want to read this." And I'll be like, at the end of the night, like, "What's in the trash? Okay, I'm going to read that. I'll take it home and read it." If he's reading it, I need to be reading it. So there was a lot of Russian, Scandinavian stuff that he was getting that I was reading, and I would just put it in binders.
Yeah.
He would already. I thought, man, this is a great benefit. He's a little smarter than me, so he's already highlighted all the good stuff. Take it out of the trash and look at all the stuff he's highlighted. I can get my cliff notes right here. So anyway, I would read all the stuff Steve would recommend and read and give me secondhand. And then I got involved in grad school, taking that even further, doing a thesis for my master's, having to do a literature review and all that stuff, going into the literature because I was doing some studies. I did a study that was applicable to athletic training, strength and conditioning. Then I hired my first assistant when I took over. I hired Fred Hatfield's son, Freddie, whose father had been to Russia and studied with the Russians. So I got to talk to Dr. Squat, Fred Hatfield, about that experience and get more information from him and articles and things. And so that binder just grew, and that bookshelf just got more full as the years went on.
And you talked about this too, how involving as coaching, you also you get involved to really transform an athlete's body or a person's body. Nutrition becomes a huge piece into doing that. And during either the class that I took from you, where I feel like a lot of my knowledge, you mentioned a football player who was a big guy who needed to lose some weight. And do you remember that story?
Oh yeah, I know where you're going with that one. Yeah, I'm not going to mention his name, but that was very interesting. He was over fat. He needed to have weight. He was a lineman, so he wasn't overweight. We wanted him at the weight he was at, but he was just carrying way too much body fat. So we needed to transition, build muscle, and lose some of that body fat because he was just, way too fat. So we brought him in. He was a good old country boy, grew up in the country, eating grandma's cooking. And we said, okay, let's talk about your diet. How do you eat? I like to eat, a lot of bacon and eggs and sausage and gravy and for breakfast. And so, well, we got to cut back on that. Let's eat some more fruit. Let's get all that gravy off of there, and let's don't eat so much bacon, and let's maybe cut those eggs in half egg whites, half egg, whole eggs. Okay, so he tried that. How about them sweet rolls? No, we can't. We got to get the sweet rolls out. Maybe add a couple eggs if you need to add more. Just no more sweet rolls. He says, okay, well, at dinner time, what do you eat? And he says, well, I like fried chicken. I love fried chicken. He says, I know how to do it myself. I can fry it up. I said, we got to get that fried chicken out of your diet. I said, we're going to have you broil your chicken. I said, do you have a broiling pan? He says, he went home and he came back. He says, yeah, I got one. It's in my oven. And that was one of those pans, where the drippings drop down and the chicken stays up on top.
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to put your chicken breasts in there. You're going to put them in the oven at this temperature, and you're going to broil them. You're going to bake them. And he says, do I have to take the skin off? I love that skin. And I'm like, yeah, you can't eat skin anymore. And so he cooked it without the skin. He came back in the next day and he says, that stuff's so dry, I can't eat it. I said, well, leave the skin on, but after you cook it, you got to pull it off. You can't eat the skin.
Yeah.
You have to just throw it in the trash. You got a dog. Dogs love it, but you can't eat the skin in. So that's nothing but fat. So just eat the white meat and then eat your vegetables, blah, blah, blah. So anyways, we thought we had that one all figured out. A couple weeks later, his weight's going up. His body fat, I'm doing skin folds on him. His body fat isn't moving. And I'm like, man, are you doing what we told you to do with the chicken? And, and he says, yeah. And I said, you're taking the chicken skin off? You're not eating the chicken skin? He says, no, I don't eat that. I said, he says, well, what about if he says, is it okay if I, at the bottom of that pan, all that juice, if I just take the bread and dip that juice and eat it? I said, no, you can't eat that juice. That's nothing but drizzle. That's fat. He says, oh, I've been doing that. He says, that stuff is good. He'd been taking white bread, eating that chicken breast, throwing the skin away. But basically all that happens is that skin basically melts and goes down in the bottom of the pan. That's all that chicken fat. Yeah. And he'd been sopping it up with bread and eating it. And I was like, oh my goodness, boy. He grew up in the country, where they can eat it all. He was a good old country boy. And so we had to get him off of that. That was an interesting one. But yeah, we eventually got him down. He was quick. He was a defensive lineman and he could attack you. But yeah, we got some of that extra body fat off of him. Because I had to be, back then, man, you had to be the strength coach. You had to be the sports psychologist because there were no sports psychologists. So I was studying psychology. I was studying, Dennis Waitley and all these great sports psychologists back in the day and learning all I could to, try to be this guy, this psychologist, shade tree mechanic kind of guy. Had to be the dietitian because there was nobody, the coaches said, well, what should they be eating? Tell them, what supplements should they be taking? Tell them, So you did all of that. Now, looking like where I'm at now, we have a full-time dietetic staff. Wow. We have a full-time dietitian, sports dietitian that works with our team. And she does the bod pods and she checks their body comp for us. And she counsels with them, takes them to the grocery store and teaches them, takes them to the classroom that they have and teaches them how to cook, does all that. We have a full-time staff of sports psychologists. I think we have 4 here now. So the girls need that. They've got that. We've got doctors. We've got physical therapists. We've got osteopaths. We've got chiropractors. We've got exercise physiologists. So now my job has become down this funnel now to where it used to be I was the whole funnel. Now I'm coming down the funnel as one part now to where, I still, because I was so involved in all that, I still kind of have a little touch in it, but not like I used to where I was the go-to. I try to help out in those areas, but now I'm focused on performance, strength and conditioning and performance from that standpoint.
Is there any any research that you've kind of come apart that has got you excited about the future?
Well, you were asking about programming and program design, stuff that excites me, and the research into that, is interesting. I like to use something called autoregulatory resistance training, progressive resistance training. And I studied that from a gentleman out of Germany, Buchholz, Dietmar Buchholz, years ago. He wrote a book. And I can't think of the name of the book right now. It's something like the greatest sports book ever, or the greatest training the greatest athlete ever. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, Donovan. But anyway, it was the hardest read I've ever gone through.
Yeah.
But it was brilliant. And I was like, I'd read a chapter and I'd be like, I know there was some really good stuff in there, but I don't know that I quite understood it. So I'd go back and reread it and take more notes and highlight different things, because his language was different than the language we grew up with. The way he used the word plyometric was different. The way he used the word, impulse or power or, strength, those were different. And so I had to really learn the language. I had to read it and learn the language, then reread it and read it again. And then I started applying it to my own training, and then my son's training, and then some of the athletes' training. And then I started seeing, hey, this stuff really works. And it's a more efficient way, I think, to train rather than the old periodization. We started off years ago, Tudor Bumple's books on periodization, and Dr. Stone, Mike Stone, and there's several of them that were involved with that early on, and wrote the books on periodization. And the NSCA was based on that, a lot of that linear periodization. We start with higher volume, lower intensity, and then we would transition. We would decrease the volume and increase the intensity, basically very linear. Which works out well for an individual athlete, like a track and field athlete, a weightlifter, which, like I said earlier, is where a lot of that early research came from.
Yeah.
But you start dealing with team sport athletes that have multiple competitions, and some even multiple competitions within a week.
Yeah.
And it's not linear. It's, that thing is moving all over the place. So then we went into what's called nonlinear periodization, taking that linear model and now breaking it up into smaller chunks and, hitting those peaks at different times. And that worked out well. And then I went into, like I said, studying this autoregulatory, and I knew that was something I had done myself and had good success with, and not knowing that's what it was called.
Yeah.
We just said, hey, this is kind of read your own body, how it regulates. It's automatic, it'll tell you when it's ready for more. And do you know much about the autoregulatory training?
I don't, and I'm going to be looking it up once.
Well, autoregulatory, we're like linear periodization. You're having microcycles, mesocycles, and macrocycles, and you're basically laying things out long term, and you're trying to stick with it linearly over time.
Yeah.
And we found there's just too many variables that change, where that's almost impossible. Like I said, with maybe a thrower or a weightlifter, you can do that because they're training for one competition, for one output. A thrower, a shot putter, they might do 3 to 5 shot puts in a day.
Yeah.
At a competition, warming up and then 3 in the meet. And that's what you're training them to peak for. A weightlifter, they're doing a clean and jerk and a snatch, and they're doing 3 of those.
Yeah.
So, but a basketball player, they're running for 40 minutes and jumping and cutting and everything else. And then they're doing it again 2 to 3 days later. And they're doing that over a course of a season. And it's just a whole different thing. It's hard to do that linear model throughout that career or throughout that season. So, with this autoregulatory, what it does is, you say, Donovan, we're doing, let's just say, and it has periodization built into it. So maybe we'll start at a higher volume, do it sets of 10, and then we'll transition over time down to sets of 3.
Yeah.
So we're dropping the volume and we're increasing the intensity. But how does it happen within the workout itself? How do you know, if we're doing 3 sets of 10, How do you know that was enough? Maybe
Yeah.
you're a phenomenal, recovery athlete. You got great genetics, and maybe to get to the stimulus you need to have optimal, results, you might have needed a fourth set or a fifth set. But maybe you're not. Maybe you're that guy that doesn't eat right, doesn't sleep right, and maybe after the second set, third set was detrimental. That's the one that made you play bad 2 days later.
Yeah.
So with autoregulatory, it lets the athlete's performance show us. Okay. In that third set, were you able to get, if we were doing sixes, were you able to get six? And if you did, was it easy? If it was easy, we're going to do another set. If you didn't get six, that means we had you too high. We're shutting you down. We're not doing another set.
Gotcha. Yep.
So we regulated off of the performance each day.
That's interesting. That's kind of in a way what my training is, because I'm working with people who have day jobs or they're semi-retired and my goal for a lot of them, there's a couple of athletes I'm working with that are college level athletes, but for the most part, most of the people I'm working with are people who are just trying to move, feel better, look better. And so a lot of it is based off one of the first questions I ask them: how you feeling today?
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of helps dictate, the intensity of, or do I have to warm them up, or do I have to rep them up to the weight to do a longer warm up? Or if they're ready to go, then I know we can go for a strong one and seeing how they're moving.
Right.
I want to go into some lightning round questions, and then if you have any questions for me. So these questions, you don't have to, they don't have to be short, but whatever comes to your head, I want you to give me your answer here.
Ready.
All right. Favorite piece of equipment?
Oh man, a barbell.
Love it. A favorite assessment test?
Well, it depends on what I'm assessing. If I'm assessing endurance, conditioning, I still like a good mile run.
Yeah.
Just to test endurance and toughness. If you can push hard into that third and fourth lap,
Yeah.
that just shows me, hey, this person, this athlete's, they're going to be great.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you with 100% surety, I've been doing this for 30 years. And every time I do that mile run, even with sports where people are going to say, well, why does he do a mile run with the basketball team? Here's the reason why. Because I can tell you, the kids that are successful on that court are the same ones that are going to show you that they can push hard in that mile run, because they got toughness late in the game. They got toughness. They're not going to let it beat them. They're going to beat it. They take it on, and with that mindset that this is a challenge and I'm going to beat it.
Yeah.
Where you'll see the kids that maybe get into it and say, well, that's tough. Well, they usually don't end up being very good.
Yeah.
When practice gets tough, that's the same thing they do. So, but you can use that in a team setting to help those that do succeed early, to help them put the pressure on the other ones. The next thing you know, those are the kids that are coming back to you at the end of the year saying, I never thought I could do that, but we did it.
That's cool.
Said, well, because your teammates helped you, because I encouraged you and they helped you. You did some things that you never thought you could do.
That's cool. Favorite food?
Rice. I love rice. I'll probably say that because I had 2 big bowls of rice for breakfast this morning. My wife makes me something called favorite rice, and it's I'm probably about 99% vegetarian.
Yeah.
My wife is vegan. My son has been a vegetarian his whole life. He's never had a piece of meat in his whole life. So my home is vegetarian.
Yeah.
So and I'm okay with that. I love it. And when I was at JMU, I was a vegetarian. I grew up eating meat. I grew up eating bacon and eggs and all that for breakfast, and pork chops for dinner and all that. So my mom's always confused when I go home and I don't eat meat anymore. But anyway, rice. This morning I had the favorite rice. It's and today she used jasmine rice, which I like. We got a rice cooker. And it's scrambled eggs. I eat eggs. I'm a lacto-ovo vegetarian. scrambled eggs and this veggie sausage she used this morning. These sausage links that are vegetarian. Oh, man, and you put a little bit of this stuff called Bragg's aminos on there.
Yeah.
Liquid aminos. It's kind of like a soy sauce, but it has a better taste than soy sauce. It's not as salty. Oh, I had one bowl, and I do the time restricted eating, so I don't eat until like 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I get up and I drink my coffee black, and I'll usually work out in the morning or go do something with the dog, and then I'll eat around 11. And so I had that bowl this morning at 11, and my wife walked out of the room, and I thought, I'm going to have another bowl. And so I had 2 bowls, and I'll tell you what, that rice, and I just drank some water with it because I'd already had my coffee.
Yeah.
And by 12 o'clock, I told my wife, I said, I feel like I just, overate today.
Yeah.
That rice swells when you put that water in there with it. Like,
yeah.
Oh, goodness, I had a little rice baby going on. Yeah. So yeah, rice. I love rice. It's so functional. You can do so many things with it.
All right. What's your favorite cue or, kind of thing you're giving? Like if it's like shoulders back, or what's your favorite cue to kind of remind people on?
Great job. That was excellent.
There you go. I love that.
If you look for excellent first, so like I learned this early on. I read a book called The Attitude of Gratitude. And if you give gratitude first, if you start with gratitude, so I would watch guys do, maybe let's talk about a power clean.
Yeah.
And maybe they were bending their elbows too early, but yet they were snapping their hips and they were shrugging and they were catching really good with those elbows. So instead of me yelling, hey, Johnny, bend your elbows, screaming at him, I would wait till the end of that set and go over and say, man, your hips were coming through good. That's excellent. Your shrug was excellent. So now let's change the elbows. Start with the good first. Start with giving them that honey first, before you throw that vinegar in there. Give them a little bit of something sweet and say, man, that looked good, that looked good, that looked good. Now change this.
Yeah.
If you go in there first and yelling, that sucked, change that, they turn you off, and sometimes that's the worst thing you can do. So great attitude of gratitude, giving gratitude, queuing up with gratitude.
Love it.
Find something good to say to them first.
Love that. Favorite music to work out to?
Myself?
Yeah.
Oh, because I learn all kinds of music training athletes. Because, my son's got me hooked up on Spotify with the latest, greatest. But I put a filter on because I don't like that dirty language. So I filter it to make it. If anybody walks in this weight room, somebody brings their little kid in, they're going to be okay. But the kids got that beat that they love. I like it all, man. Sometimes I'm in my garage and I'm playing 70s rock, 80s rock. Sometimes I'm in there playing, I just call it audiophile music. It's just, and really nice Yanni and stuff like that. I'm listening to that kind of stuff. Sometimes I'm listening to country. It just depends. I love music. I love all kinds of music. Yeah.
Any questions for me?
Oh, I just, I'm impressed by you. I'm very encouraged to see what you're doing out there as a JMU grad, you and Jackie, and growing your family and growing your business and seeing you transition from, I think the way I followed it, you transitioned from being employed to being the employer,
Yeah.
And that had to be a little bit scary for you, I know from being a business owner and stepping away and jumping in it and like, okay, I'm going to give it a shot, man, see how it goes. And for me, I think if I would have done what you're doing, I probably would still be doing what you're doing.
I was just asking if you had any questions for me, but I think.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've watched a couple of your podcasts here. With you talking to some of your trainers and the young lady, I can't think of her name, who's been working for you for a while.
Tara, probably.
Yeah, Tara.
Yeah.
You've got good people. That's a key.
Oh my God, yeah.
You can be a great trainer yourself.
Yeah.
And if you hire one bad person, man, it can take you down real quick. But I could
Totally.
tell she's legit, she's sincere because she smiled that whole talk. That whole interaction you had with her, she was just bubbling. Her
Yeah.
face was lit up. I was like, I would like her to train me. She is just full of, energy and happiness, you know.
What's cool is and maybe if I might send you some of the videos. Jackie and her, they will train together. Like 3 or 4 days a week. They'll work out together, and they'll
Yep.
push each other. And they'll got the music going, and they'll go for 90 minutes to 2 hours and just
Oh yeah. No, I've
go.
seen some videos of Jackie on the spinning bike getting
Yeah.
that. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah. No,
I
it's
remember, I
really
remember
cool.
Jackie at JMU. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. She's doing good.
Good.
But I'm gonna wrap this up because she has to go to training. She's a firefighter. Also,
Oh, wow.
she's a volunteer firefighter, so she has training tonight. Um, but I
Well,
want to.
are there any forest fires in that area?
There's a decent amount, especially not. It's so fire season starts in June, and it really ramps up in August and September, and then usually by the end of October, and it's really when we have rain and we don't have rain. So
Yeah.
we usually get rain starting in November through May, and then from June on, if we get any rain, if we get a day or two, it's something.
Oh, I remember when I was out there at the Pacific out in Stockton and it rained and everybody was like, and I'm like, it's rain. Why are you so excited? They're like, it never rains here. And I'm like, well, okay. I'm used to it raining like every month in, Tennessee or Virginia.
Yeah.
But they were oh, it's raining, like it was raining, silver dollars or something.
Yeah. So
I remember when you were helping us out at JMU telling, it must have been Matt, but I said, you were a little on the quiet side, but you asked great questions, and I could tell you were really like taking notes, man. You were really in there to learn. And I said, that guy's going to do something because he smiles all the time. So I know he loves it. I mean, he loves being involved with this. He's smiling all the time.
Yeah.
I said, and he's taking a lot of notes.
Yeah.
Said, so he's going to go do something.
And it was huge because the thing that I think the hard thing and the good and bad thing about our industry is that there's a lot of people who don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So the people who know what they're doing look like superstars because of it. Yeah. And I think getting that education and continuing to learn and take up new education really helped, and it's really allowed me to kind of create something special here.
So that's your facility you're in right now?
So this is one of our spaces. This is our studio where we normally would do classes. Right now, we're really just using it for like private Pilates and some private sessions. And then our gym is kind of right around the corner from me. It's like a block away.
Okay.
And that's attached to a resort. Oh, so we kind of lease out that space, and this is kind of our secondary space. But usually last year we had a lot of people in here doing classes, things like that. But now we just kind of use it more.
And the place you were at before, Solage, is that right?
Yes.
Is that a resort? That was a resort?
That was a resort also.
I thought, boy, I would look at those pictures and I say, man, Donovan's at a daggum resort over here having fun every day out in the swimming pool.
Yeah, it was a cool place, and what was cool is being able to design the gym when I first moved out here before we opened and kind of put that program together. It was kind of good practice before I did my own thing. It was kind of using somebody else's money to kind of test it out, build out the gym that was kind of approachable and cool and new for people visiting or the members who live locally. And it became something. It was pretty cool to see. And I was like, I'm ready to recreate that for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that lady you trained that has her own facility at her house, you did a video with her?
Yes.
that she works at Best Buy. She was part of
Yeah.
Best Buy's growth. Looks like she's got a nice place at home.
She
She's
does.
got a lot of energy.
She has a lot of energy. She was an executive. Her dad was the founder of Best Buy.
Okay.
And but she worked. She was the oldest child, so she was expected to work, and she worked through the company, and so when she left Best Buy, it was kind of right in the beginning when I was training her, and when I was ready to leave, she was coming to me at Salage, and I said, I'm thinking about leaving, and I designed a couple of gyms, and then we started talking about the idea. She had the space on the side of her house, and we did it. And something, I don't know if you can see in the video, but the roof was glass.
Yeah.
And so you get sun.
I couldn't tell. I was thinking, boy, the weather must just be amazing there because all that equipment's going to get wet. I didn't notice there was a glass roof. Okay. I thought maybe there was something she'd pull out, maybe like a awning.
So yeah, what it is like a pergola. And
Okay.
so it has the slats, but then it's a glass roof on top of it.
Oh,
and then what's cool is like they have these like electronics shades that just kind of come down like almost like wind sails in a way.
Yeah.
And you can just hit a button and they can kind of come down, and it can almost pretty much make the gym like a nice outdoor covered patio that you would see like in the East Coast.
Right.
And it would kind of cover it up. So when it would rain, the rain would affect the equipment. And then this time of year, you can just let it up and let it be open.
So you go to her house to train her in that facility?
Exactly. So her and her husband, I train both of them, and I've been training them for years. And her husband's one he was powerlifting in Minnesota before he came out here. So he's always been working out, where she really started to get into weights once we started. And she finally had kind of that space because she was kind of getting into that semi-retired. She was getting done with Best Buy. And she's competitive in nature. So she was able to take that energy from being an executive at Best Buy and transferring it over to working harder in the gym.
Yeah, I could tell by that interview you did with her. She didn't like to sit around much.
No, she's probably pound for pound. She's 55 now, but she's pound for pound probably my strongest client because she's 125, and the hex bar deadlift, she can do 240, 250, 6 to 8 times.
Good.
And does it, and she probably could do more. I usually don't max her out, but she's strong.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for including me on this. I enjoyed our talk.
Yeah, me too. And I'll be in touch, and I'll send you the video once it's ready.
Good deal. Tell Jackie hello.
I will. Thanks.
Yeah.